A sharp gasp. A champagne flute shatters against polished marble. All heads turn toward the noise. Robert Caldwell stands at the center of his massive foyer, frozen in disbelief. His new wife, Miranda Shaw, clutches his arm, her emerald gown glittering under the chandelier. But his gaze is fixed on the far door, where a figure stands half hidden in shadow, a woman with weary eyes and trembling shoulders. That woman, Genevieve Caldwell, his ex-wife, the one he left behind. He can't speak. He can't even blink. The world seems to shrink around him, each breath ragged in his chest. Nobody told him she was here. Nobody told him that Genevieve, whom he hasn't seen in over a year, would show up tonight, especially at his own wedding reception. Miranda's grip tightens on Robert's arm. "Who invited her?" she hisses under her breath, face twisting with a mixture of shock and outrage. No answer. Robert doesn't have one. In fact, his mind is spinning, replaying images he's tried to bury the day he signed the divorce papers, the day he first realized he might have made a colossal mistake, the day he finally decided to move on. Genevieve looks thinner than he remembers, her long dark hair pinned back in a simple twist. Underneath her formal black uniform, clearly the attire of serving staff, there's a gentle curve to her midsection. She's pregnant, and by the looks of it, close to 6 months along. A faint hush falls across the grand hall. Guests in tuxedos and elegant gowns whisper behind manicured hands. The tension is palpable, like a taut string about to snap. Miranda Buckle, noticing Genevieve's condition, narrows her eyes. "Is that," she starts, but can't finish. The unspoken question about who fathered this child hovers in the charged air. Genevieve's cheeks burn with humiliation. She grips the tray in her hands until her knuckles turn white. Then, with visible effort, she straightens her back, sets the tray on a nearby table, and steps forward. She does not run. She does not cower. If anything, she looks determined, like a cornered animal forced to fight or flee. "Genevieve." Robert finally manages, voice cracking. He suddenly feels the eyes of 100 guests pinned to him like daggers. His new bride's nails dig into his sleeve. He knows that in the next 10 seconds, everything could fall apart. His reputation, his marriage, his entire life. Genevieve lifts her gaze to meet his. Hurt, betrayal, and something else flicker behind her eyes, resignation. Her words come out in a controlled whisper, but they carry the weight of thunder. "So this is your new life, Robert." No explanation, no background, just those words that slice through him like shattered glass. A hush so profound descends that the sound of a single drop of champagne hitting the marble could be heard echoing. Somewhere in the background, a string quartet that had been playing now fades. In this frozen tableau, one message rings clear: everything you thought was safe is about to unravel. A few minutes earlier, before the glass shattered, the party was dazzling. A glittering crowd of business tycoons and philanthropists had gathered inside the Caldwell Estate's grand reception hall. Sweeping staircases, polished floors, and an orchestra providing gentle waltzes, every detail screamed wealth and power. This was Robert Caldwell's triumphant night, the unveiling of his new marriage and his bold step into a newly merged enterprise. Standing by the tall windows, Robert's half-brother, Joseph Caldwell, gazed out at the winding driveway. He noticed a catering van parked beside expensive cars. A fleeting thought crossed his mind that it was odd for the staff to arrive so late. Then again, Joseph had bigger worries, the rumors swirling about Robert's abrupt divorce from Genevieve, and the fact that nobody had truly heard her side of the story. "Joseph." Miranda's voice cut in. She slipped to his side, her expression unreadable. "Would you fetch Robert? The announcement starts soon." Something in her eyes felt like a warning, a silent command for Joseph not to ask too many questions. Miranda was like that, always controlling the narrative, ensuring nothing overshadowed her moment. With a tight nod, Joseph stepped away, weaving through the crowd. Meanwhile, near the estate's side entrance, Genevieve Carter, still using Robert's surname legally, stood in a stark black uniform. She clutched her small bag of personal items close to her chest. The catering manager barked instructions, Keep your head down. Serve the guests. No mistakes. Genevieve's heart pounded. She never wanted to show up here. But after losing her job at the clinic and facing mounting debts, this last-minute gig was her only option for a paycheck. She was alone, pregnant, and too proud to ask anyone for help, especially not Robert. As she stepped inside, the weight of the Caldwell estate bore down on her, reminding her of the night she'd wandered these halls as the lady of the house, back when she believed her marriage was unbreakable. She paused by a mirror in a side corridor, the reflection of her pregnant belly staring back. A quiet rush of anger and sadness coursed through her. This child was conceived in a final, desperate attempt to save a love that was already dying, and now the father was living large with another woman, the entire city applauding his new union. Across the hall, a handful of staff whispered about the ex-wife lurking among them. The rumor had spread instantly after someone recognized Genevieve in the staff lounge. Some pitied her. Others were curious how she had ended up here, serving the very man who discarded her. Genevieve inhaled slowly. She promised herself she would make it through the night without causing a scene. Just do the job, take the pay, and leave. But fate had different plans, because as she was distributing fresh champagne flutes, a guest accidentally bumped her tray. The glass slipped, shattered on the floor, and drew every eye in the room, including Robert's. That was the moment of unveiling. The moment Robert Caldwell saw his pregnant ex-wife in a servant's uniform at his own wedding reception. And in that moment, Genevieve felt the sting of injustice as the entire room pinned her under a harsh, judging stare. "Please, I can't handle this," Genevieve murmured, bending down to pick up shards of glass. The catering manager glared at her. "You'd better handle it fast," he hissed, "or you'll be out of here with nothing." Hunched on her knees, Genevieve's mind raced. She recalled nights spent in that very room, waltzing with Robert, joking with their guests, celebrating his early career triumphs. The same marble floor that once echoed her laughter now felt cold and punishing beneath her fingertips. From her peripheral vision, she saw a swirl of green Miranda, striding forward in her glittering gown. The new Mrs. Caldwell halted inches away from Genevieve, arms folded. "Clean it up," Miranda said curtly. Then, in a lower tone only Genevieve could hear, she added, "I won't have your drama ruining my night." A flush of anger rose in Genevieve's cheeks. She bit down on her lip, forcing herself to remain calm. The injustice was suffocating. Miranda had everything now: the mansion, the lifestyle, the public admiration. And yet she spoke to Genevieve like a disobedient child. Robert stood nearby, silent. His expression flickered between concern and guilt. For a moment, he looked like he might intervene, might demand Miranda show some compassion. But the moment passed. Instead, he merely gestured for one of the staff to assist. Genevieve gathered the shattered glass into a dustpan, then hurried away before she could snap back and say something she might regret. She retreated to the staff corridor, pressing her palm against her chest to steady her breathing. Her baby shifted inside her, a reminder of what truly mattered now. Leaning against a wall, Genevieve shut her eyes. Memories tumbled in. 3 years ago, Robert's bold promise that once his new technology patents were approved, they'd travel the world. And 2 years ago, she begged him to go to marriage counseling, but he was too busy. 1 year ago, the day he left, saying he'd found someone more aligned with his vision. Guilt tugged at her heart for being here, but she needed the money. It was that simple, that humiliating. Meanwhile, out in the main hall, Joseph Caldwell observed everything from a distance. He noted Miranda's cold demeanor toward Genevieve. He saw the flicker of shame in Robert's eyes. Joseph had tried to stay neutral throughout the divorce, but seeing Genevieve like this troubled him. He approached Robert quietly. "Wasn't expecting her tonight." "Was I?" Joseph said, forcing a half smile. "But hey, might be a chance for you two to talk." Robert tensed, eyes scanning for Miranda before responding. "We'll talk, just not here." In that moment, Joseph caught a glimpse of regret so profound it made him question how his brother truly felt about Genevieve's departure. Maybe Robert's polished veneer was just a shield, hiding heartbreak and confusion. Across the room, Miranda's personal assistant hovered with a phone in hand, eyebrows knitted. She seemed anxious, receiving texts or calls that made her glance warily at Robert in the staff entrance. It was as though there was something bigger at play, some hidden plan or piece of information that threatened to explode. For now, Genevieve was left in the shadows, carrying not just a child, but the weight of sorrow and a feeling of betrayal so intense it nearly stole her breath. Tonight was supposed to be Robert's perfect celebration. Instead, it had become a stage for moral conflict and unspoken histories, like a clock quietly ticking down to inevitable confrontation. In the dimly lit staff lounge, Genevieve carefully placed the dustpan of broken glass on a counter. Her hands trembled. She shut her eyes, inhaling slowly to regain composure. She could almost hear the words her mother used to whisper when times were hard. Be strong, child. Survive with grace. But Grace felt elusive now. Less than a year ago, she was Mrs. Caldwell, presiding over charity events and raising funds for medical research. She had believed in Robert's vision, stood by him through every late-night crisis call, and eventually put her own nursing career on hold to support his expanding empire. She sank into a rickety chair, letting her head fall into her hands. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her. The baby stirred again, as if sensing her turmoil. It's okay, she whispered, palm pressed gently to her abdomen. We'll find a way. Just then, the lounge door creaked open. In walked a fellow server, a middle-aged woman with warm brown eyes named Martha. She offered Genevieve a soft smile, then crouched down beside her. I recognize you, Martha murmured, voice tinged with empathy. You used to be on the charity boards. I saw you speak at a fundraiser a few years back. And now, this. Genevieve swallowed hard. Life changes in the blink of an eye. Martha nodded, pressing a bottle of water into Genevieve's hand. Stay hydrated, dear. This crowd can be merciless. Their conversation halted when the lounge TV, set to a muted local news channel, caught Martha's eye. A lower third headline scrolled across to the screen. Caldwell Tech merger approved, company stock surges. Above it, footage played of Robert and Miranda smiling for reporters. Genevieve looked away. The injustice stung like salt on an open wound. Martha spoke softly. If it's too hard, you can leave. We can cover for you. Genevieve exhaled. I can't afford to walk away from this shift. Deep in her heart, though, she knew it wasn't just about the money. She felt something else stirring, a quiet determination to stand her ground. Perhaps seeing Robert in his new life, acknowledging the pain head on, was a step toward regaining a sense of control. In the corridor, footsteps grew louder. Miranda's personal assistant appeared, peering into the lounge. Spotting Genevieve, she stepped in with purposeful strides. Mrs. Caldwell, she paused, correcting herself. Genevieve. Mr. Caldwell wants to speak with you. Privately. Genevieve tensed. She had anticipated this moment, but not so soon. She glanced at Martha, who gave an encouraging nod. Gathering her courage, Genevieve rose to her feet. She would face Robert. She would do it on her terms. As she followed the assistant down a long hallway that led to Robert's private study, her mind churned with questions. What could he possibly want? Explanations, apologies, denial, the possibilities tangled in her head, each one laced with the old ache of love and betrayal. This was the final threshold before truths had to be spoken, no more hiding behind pleasantries or forced smiles. Yet, as she neared the door, a soft hum of dread settled in her gut. She suspected that the injustice she'd endured was merely the opening act. Something darker lurked beneath the surface, and she was about to step directly into its path. Robert's private study was a blend of rich mahogany shelves and tasteful modern decor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a moonlit garden. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a peaceful sanctuary. But tonight, while tension crackled in the air, Genevieve stood awkwardly by the door, noticing that Robert had already removed his tuxedo jacket, as if preparing for an uncomfortable conversation. His face was drawn, shoulders tight with stress. She remembered that posture from the early days of his first major business crisis, a man caught between pride and panic. "Thank you for coming," Robert began, his voice subdued. He motioned for her to take a seat across the imposing oak desk. She remained standing. Silence stretched between them like an unbridgeable gap. Finally, Robert's composure cracked. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight," he said, glancing down. If I had known, Genevieve stiffened, arms crossed over her small, pregnant belly. "You would have what?" "Told security not to let me in." A flicker of remorse crossed his features. "No, of course not. I never wanted this," he said, gesturing vaguely at her uniform and the tension in the house. "I'm sorry, Genevieve, I truly am." She swallowed the lump forming in her throat. Apologies felt too little, too late. Memories of their past flooded back, how they once sat side by side in this very study, drafting philanthropic strategies, planning a dream vacation across Europe. She used to believe they were unstoppable together. "I needed the work," Genevieve said at last. "Ironic, isn't it? Working at the estate I used to manage." Robert stood, circling around the desk to close the distance between them. "I had no idea you'd fallen on hard times. If you needed help, you could have asked you," she scoffed bitterly. "The day you left, you made it clear you were done with me, with our life, our plans." His gaze dropped to her belly. "Is it?" She nodded, tears threatening. "Yes, yours." Emotions flickered across his face: shock, concern, regret. He took a step forward, but she raised a hand to keep him at bay. "Don't. This changes nothing. I'm doing this alone." Robert's voice quavered. "Genevieve, I never meant to hurt you this deeply." For a moment, she almost softened, recalling the wide-eyed optimism he once had. But then she remembered how swiftly he'd replaced her with Miranda. "Well, you did," she whispered. Behind them, a faint knock interrupted. The door opened, revealing Joseph Caldwell's cautious face. He glanced between them, sensing the charged atmosphere. "Robert, they're calling for you to rejoin the reception. Investors want to finalize the partnership announcement." Robert looked torn, glancing from Joseph to Genevieve. She turned away, not wanting him to see the vulnerability in her eyes. He exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. "Give me a minute." Joseph nodded and left. When they were alone again, Robert's tone turned urgent. "Listen to me carefully, Genevieve, don't vanish. We need to talk more about everything. If the child is mine, I want—" She cut him off, voice trembling. "You want to own everything you touch, but you can't own this baby's future. Not after what you did." With that, she brushed past him and exited the study. She didn't look back, but inside her heart pounded like a war drum. There was more to uncover, more to confess or confront, and she dreaded the moment those secrets would come crashing into the open. Moments later, Genevieve found refuge in a quiet corner of the estate, a small reading nook beneath a winding staircase. The noise of the reception drifted through the corridors, muffled and distant. She pressed a trembling hand to her abdomen, whispering reassurances to her unborn child. In the hush of that dim space, her mind wandered back to the day she first met Robert Caldwell, nearly 30 years ago. They were both volunteer workers at a local clinic. She, a newly licensed nurse; he, an entrepreneur pitching medical devices to improve patient care. Their shared passion for healing and progress drew them together. She remembered his grin, full of hope and determination, promising her they'd change the world. The memory felt bittersweet now. She recalled how, in the early years, Robert was the gentlest soul. Late nights spent building prototypes in their garage, endless cups of coffee, and midnight walks where they'd dream about the future. They'd scraped by, paying bills with her modest nurse's salary while he courted investors. When success finally came, it swept them both into a whirlwind of wealth and accolades. At first, it was thrilling, glamorous events, influential connections. But as Robert's empire grew, so did his distance from her. He spent longer hours at the office. He hired armies of assistants, traveled globally for deals. Whenever Genevieve suggested they slow down, He insisted he was doing it all for them. Yet deep down, she sensed he was chasing something else, a validation that no amount of money could truly satisfy. Then Miranda arrived. Initially as a consultant, Genevieve saw the shift in Robert's eyes. He lit up around Miranda's ambitious ideas and unwavering confidence. Genevieve tried to keep their marriage alive, but each day she felt more invisible. The last time they truly spoke heart to heart was the night she told him she wanted to try for another child. He barely looked up from his laptop. Genevieve blinked back tears in the present moment. A soft voice startled her, Genevieve. She turned to see Martha, the fellow server, approach with a sympathetic expression. "You all right?" Genevieve managed a sad smile. "As right as I can be, I suppose." Martha hesitated. They're about to make an announcement in the main hall. Something about Robert's new medical merger. The staff is required to gather in the side corridor. A pang of anxiety shot through Genevieve. Facing that crowd again especially, Miranda felt unbearable. But she had a job to do, and she needed the money. "All right," she said softly, rising from the small bench. "Let's go." As they walked, Genevieve sensed an undercurrent of tension that extended beyond her personal drama. Security guards stationed themselves at each doorway, whispering into earpieces. She overheard fragments about documents and leaks. Something bigger was unfolding behind the scenes of this lavish wedding reception. She squared her shoulders, determined not to be swallowed by the swirl of secrets. Whatever happened next, she would face it head on. After all, she was no longer just fighting for her own dignity, she was fighting for the future of the child growing inside her. And that thought, more than anything, fueled her resolve to see this night through, no matter what hidden truths might still surface. Genevieve and Martha slipped into the side corridor where the catering crew quietly assembled. A hush fell over them as the mansion's main lights dimmed, signaling that a formal announcement was about to begin in the grand hall. Faint strains of orchestral music swelled, then faded to silence. From her vantage point at the edge of a tall archway, Genevieve observed the back of Robert's figure on a small stage. Miranda stood beside him, poised and radiant. On the other side, members of the Caldwell Tech Board flanked them, eager to celebrate the unveiling of a highly anticipated merger. A distinguished older gentleman with a deep voice took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to announce the official merger between Caldwell Tech and Clearview Medical Solutions. This partnership will revolutionize patient care worldwide." Applause erupted, cameras flashed, and the entire room buzzed with excitement. Genevieve noticed Joseph Caldwell lingering near a pillar, his expression strained. Something about his posture suggested he was uneasy. He watched Robert with a flicker of concern in his eyes, as though anticipating a moment of crisis. Then Miranda took the microphone. With polished confidence, she spoke of innovation, integrity, and family values. The words rang hollow to Genevieve. She recalled how Miranda had driven a wedge in her own marriage, how that slick charm concealed a ruthless ambition. Her monologue concluded with an invitation for Robert to share the spotlight. As he approached the microphone, he hesitated, glancing over the audience. His eyes momentarily locked with Genevieve's through the crowd. She felt her stomach knot. He looked uncertain, even guilty. Standing next to the woman who replaced her, Robert cleared his throat. "I want to thank everyone who believed in us. This merger represents years of hard work, pushing boundaries, and yes, sometimes making personal sacrifices along the way." A slight tremor in his voice betrayed the weight of those words. Genevieve wondered if he was thinking about the sacrifice of their marriage. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the back of the hall. A security guard murmured into a radio. Joseph stepped away from the pillar, striding briskly toward the disturbance. Though it was hard to see clearly, Genevieve could sense something was off. The energy in the room shifted from celebratory to tense. Miranda, ever poised, tried to redirect attention by clapping enthusiastically, yet the applause sounded forced, uncertain. Robert blinked, his prepared remarks forgotten. "Is everything all right?" "Joseph," he called out. Joseph didn't answer. Instead, he discreetly escorted a distraught-looking woman away from the hall. Another guard followed. The door closed behind them. Miranda took the microphone again, forcing a smile. "I'm sure it's just a minor issue. Ladies and gentlemen, Let's continue our celebration. Shall we? Genevieve's heart pounded. She recognized that woman. One of the employees from Caldwell Tech, a researcher who once confided in her that Miranda was pressuring staff to bury certain test results. Could that be related to the leaks she overheard earlier? The crowd resumed polite chatter as the lights returned to normal. On the surface, the party continued, but Genevieve sensed deep undercurrents of conflict. This wasn't merely about her personal grief or Robert's guilt anymore. There were secrets and potential scandals swirling around Caldwell Tech. And if they burst into the open, it could shatter more than just Robert's polished public image. As the music started up again, Genevieve glanced down at her pregnant belly, a protective instinct igniting within her. Something told her that by night's end, multiple truths would be forced into the light, hers included. Back in the staff corridor, Genevieve tried to steady her breathing. Anxiety coiled tighter with every passing minute. She spotted Joseph near the side door, deep in whispered conversation with the woman he had escorted out. The woman wiped tears from her cheeks, clutching a folder stuffed with documents. Genevieve's curiosity flared. She knew that folder likely contained sensitive information. A flicker of memory shot through her the day she first suspected Miranda of unethical practices. The day Robert waved off her concerns as overthinking. "Hey," Martha's gentle voice broke through. "You should sit down. You look pale." Genevieve shook her head, gripping a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "I'll be fine. Just need to keep moving." But her body betrayed her. The baby pressed against her diaphragm, and a wave of dizziness hit her. Martha quickly guided her toward a nearby chair. "Take a breath." Genevieve collapsed into the seat. Despite her attempts at composure, tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. From this, everything felt overwhelming at sight of Robert with Miranda, the swirl of corporate intrigue, the memory of how her own concerns had been dismissed in the past. It was too much, too fast. In that vulnerable moment, Joseph noticed her. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his expression kind. "I'm sorry for what you're going through," he said softly. "I had no idea you were still carrying Robert's child." She offered a weak smile. "It's not something I wanted to broadcast, especially not tonight." Joseph glanced around, then leaned in. "Listen, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. That researcher I just spoke with claims Miranda suppressed negative trial results. People got hurt because those findings never went public." He paused, letting the gravity sink in. "I think Robert has no clue how far Miranda went. Or maybe he suspected, but didn't want to face it." Genevieve's chest tightened. If that's true, it means everything Robert's built might be tainted. Joseph nodded grimly. "And it could destroy his reputation if the media gets wind of it." He hesitated, then quietly added, "Genevieve, I'm worried for you. If Miranda senses you're a threat, she won't hesitate to throw you under the bus again." She inhaled slowly. Fear lapped at her resolve but she refused to crumble. "I won't run," she murmured. "I've spent too long hiding." Joseph gave her a thoughtful look, then slipped away, phone in hand. Genevieve watched him disappear down the corridor, presumably to gather more information. A rumble of thunder outside made her glance through a window. Dark clouds roiled in the sky, as if nature herself sensed the brewing storm within these mansion walls. Guests moved about, still oblivious to the deeper conflicts unraveling. Gathering herself, Genevieve rose from the chair, determined to finish her shift. She lifted the tray and forced her legs to steady. Even if it felt humiliating, even if her heart ached seeing Robert with Miranda, she needed that paycheck. This was her low point, serving in a place she once called home, overshadowed by guilt and looming scandal. Yet somehow she felt a spark of determination ignite. Perhaps it was the baby's gentle kick, reminding her she had a life to protect. Little did she know, that spark of resolve was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. The quiet comeback she intended to quietly endure, earn her money, and leave would soon morph into a fight for truth, one that would pull her deeper into Caldwell Tech's hidden web of deceit. Genevieve re-entered the grand hall with her tray of hors d'oeuvres. The music had shifted to a softer melody, and pockets of guests conversed in hushed tones. She spotted Robert near the dais, looking distracted as he fielded questions from a group of well-dressed investors. Miranda, ever watchful, hovered close, offering poised smiles and graceful gestures. As Genevieve made her rounds, she caught snippets of conversation. Did you hear about the abrupt staff resignations at Caldwell Tech? Miranda's a genius in business, but people say she's ruthless. I wonder what the official board statement will be tomorrow. The tension was palpable. Genevieve served small plates of artisan canapes, trying to remain invisible. But her presence drew more than a few curious glances. Some recognized her as Robert's former wife. Others simply sensed she wasn't just another server. Midway through the hall, she paused to regain her balance. A sudden cramp tightened across her stomach, and she breathed carefully to ease it. The baby was likely reacting to her stress, or maybe it was the weight of standing so long. She turned to place the tray on a side table. That's when she locked eyes with Miranda. The other woman approached. Elegance draped over sharp edges. Genevieve. Miranda greeted in a low voice, taking a trip down memory lane. Are we? Genevieve refused to cower. I'm here to work, not reminisce. Miranda's gaze dipped to Genevieve's belly. So it's Robert's. How quaint. You show up now when he's finally secured the biggest business deal of his life. A sly smile crept across her lips. You should know better than to cause a scene. It won't end well for you. Blood pounded in Genevieve's ears. She recalled how effectively Miranda had pushed her aside before, painting her as an emotional wreck while Robert was too focused on deals to question it. This time, Genevieve steadied her voice. Don't threaten me. Miranda leaned in, voice icy. I don't make threats. I give warnings. We both know you've got no power here. But if you want a small payoff to vanish quietly, I can arrange that. Genevieve's stomach churned. She'd always suspected Miranda of trying to buy her silence, but hearing it stated so plainly was vile. I'm not interested in your hush money. Miranda's eyes narrowed. Suit yourself. Just remember, the Caldwell Empire thrives on eliminating problems swiftly. You're treading dangerous ground, pregnant or not. A flash of anger lit Genevieve's face. Actually, Miranda, you're the one on borrowed time. I've heard the rumors. If the truth about your little cover-up surfaces, the Caldwell name won't protect you. Miranda's mask slipped for a split second. The flicker of fear quickly turned to fury. Stay out of business, matters you don't understand. Before Genevieve could respond, Robert appeared beside them, tension radiating from his stance. Everything okay here? His gaze darted between them, unspoken panic in his eyes. Miranda's smile snapped back into place. Just a small chat between old acquaintances. She lied sweetly, resting a possessive hand on Robert's arm. I'm going to see about the final merger documents. Be a dear and escort me. Robert nodded, giving Genevieve an apologetic look before following Miranda. As they moved away, Genevieve released the breath she'd been holding. The confrontation, though brief, felt like stepping onto a battlefield she wasn't fully prepared for. Yet, as she glanced at the swirling crowd, she felt something shift within her. Maybe she had less power on paper, but she possessed one thing Miranda never would: a moral compass. And if it meant protecting her child and possibly saving Robert from Miranda's machinations, she was willing to fight, no matter how hopeless it seemed. A warm hand on Genevieve's shoulder startled her. Spinning around, she saw Joseph Caldwell again, face lined with worry. I need to talk to you, he said softly, away from prying ears. They retreated to an alcove beneath the main staircase, where the hum of the party became distant background noise. Joseph rubbed the back of his neck, clearly unsettled. I just spoke with that researcher again, the one who nearly caused a scene. He paused, lowering his voice further. She has proof Miranda manipulated data on an experimental heart device. Negative outcomes were buried. People died. Genevieve's heart clenched. She recalled that Robert's dream had always been to pioneer life-saving technology. To think his company might be tied to something so horrifying made her stomach twist. Does Robert know? Joseph exhaled. He suspects irregularities. But Miranda kept reassuring him it was all rumor. Robert's not innocent. He's been so focused on expansion and this merger that he might have willfully ignored the red flags. But if these documents go public, It won't just ruin Miranda, it'll bring Robert and Caldwell Tech down. Genevieve swallowed, remembering how often Robert used to say, "We have to put patients first." Now, she wondered if that creed had gotten lost in the tidal wave of profits and deals. "What do you want from me?" Joseph hesitated, a flash of guilt in his eyes. "I need your help to confront Robert. He won't listen to me alone, but he might listen to you, especially now that he knows you're carrying his child. We have to convince him to do the right thing, even if it means halting the merger." A pulse of determination flickered within Genevieve. It was a terrifying prospect to stand against Miranda's powerful influence and risk Robert's wrath. Yet, as she cradled her belly, she felt a surge of protective instinct. If Caldwell Tech continued on a path of deceit, more lives could be harmed. And what kind of world would her child inherit if truth was silenced by greed? She gave Joseph a firm nod. "All right, I'll try." Together, they began weaving through the guests, searching for Robert. They found him near a roped-off corridor leading to his private office, deep in conversation with a group of investors. Miranda was conspicuously absent, likely dealing with the final legalities. Summoning her courage, Genevieve approached. The investors recognized her, shock rippling across their features. One older gentleman coughed awkwardly and stepped aside, giving them space. Robert's shoulders tensed when he saw her and Joseph together, concern etched on his face. "Genevieve, Joseph, what's going on?" Joseph spoke quietly, mindful of onlookers. "We need you to come with us." "Now," Robert frowned. "I'm in the middle of negotiations here." "People died because of suppressed device data," Genevieve interrupted, voice shaking with emotion. "Your name is on the documents that authorized it." "We have proof." Robert's eyes widened. For a long beat, he said nothing, just stared at Genevieve. Then, with a curt nod, he excused himself from the investors. They slipped away to a small lounge off the main hallway. Robert immediately turned on Joseph, voice low and heated. "What is this about? Are you trying to sabotage me tonight?" Joseph inhaled slowly. "I'm trying to save you." And Caldwell Tech. Genevieve placed a hand on Robert's arm, forcing him to face her. "Miranda lied to you, Robert. This is bigger than personal affairs. Real lives are at stake." His defenses wavered, the confident businessman facade cracking. "Show me," he said finally, his voice almost pleading. In that moment, Genevieve realized the fight wasn't merely about seeking justice for the lost lives, she was also fighting for Robert's soul. He'd wandered too far down a dark path. If she could pull him back, maybe they could still protect what once was good in him, for the sake of their unborn child. They rushed to Joseph's makeshift war room, a small guest bedroom down a quiet corridor. Papers and a laptop sat on a polished desk, and the researcher whose name Genevieve learned was Dr. Angela Miller stood anxiously by a window. She turned at their entrance, relief flooding her features when she saw Robert in tow. "Mr. Caldwell," Angela began, nerves evident in her voice. "I wanted to tell you this months ago, but Miranda threatened me, threatened my family. I couldn't stay silent anymore." Robert approached the desk, scanning the documents spread across it, clinical trial reports, internal emails, memos flagged under confidential review. The more he read, the paler he became. Genevieve hovered at his side, feeling his shock radiate like a physical force. "These are the device trials for the cardio lift project," Robert muttered, voice tense. "I personally authorize advanced testing, but Miranda handled the daily oversight. She told me the trials were going well." Angela shook her head, eyes glistening. They were not. The device malfunctioned in 10% of the cases, and at least 4 patients suffered fatal complications that could have been prevented if the product had been recalled immediately. Silence slammed into the room. Joseph watched his brother carefully. Genevieve could feel Robert's horror building as he pieced together the timeline. All the nights she'd asked him, "Are you sure everything is safe?" he had brushed her off, assured her that Miranda had it under control. Finally, Robert threw the papers onto the desk, face contorted in anger and shame. "I had no idea it was this bad. Why didn't I see it?" Angela spoke softly. Miranda orchestrated a cover-up. She shifted budgets, falsified data, and silenced dissenting voices. Most employees were too afraid to speak. Caldwell Pick is a leading name, and Miranda's intimidation was intense. Robert pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. I've built my entire life around improving healthcare. Now, this, he looked at Genevieve, eyes pleading. You believe me, right? That I never meant for this to happen. She took his hand gently. I believe you never wanted to hurt anyone, but you have to take responsibility now. He nodded, swallowing hard. We'll stop the merger. We'll launch a full investigation. Those families, we have to make it right somehow. Just as relief began to settle in the room, the door burst open. Miranda, eyes blazing, strode in with two imposing security guards behind her. What do you think you're doing? Robert, she demanded, voice trembling with fury. Her gaze swept over the incriminating documents, then landed on Dr. Miller. You worthless traitor. Miranda spat. Guards, take her out of here. Now Joseph stepped protectively in front of Angela. Stay back. He warned the guards, who hesitated, uncertain whether to follow Miranda's orders against the Caldwell family's wishes. Robert faced Miranda, outrage burning in his eyes. You lied to me about everything. People died. Miranda's lips curled in defiance. You knew the risks. Don't pretend you're a saint. This entire empire sits on precarious ground. One scandal, and we lose everything. Genevieve felt the tension spike. This was it, the confrontation that threatened to unravel every secret. Miranda looked at Robert with a mixture of contempt and desperation. She's not just going to walk away quietly, Genevieve realized. The guards shifted, waiting for clear orders. Robert clenched his fists. We're telling the board and halting the merger. It's over. Miranda, her eyes flashed. Over. It's only over if I say so. You think you can discard me like you did your precious wife? She flung a scornful glance at Genevieve's pregnant form. Watch how quickly everything you've built comes crashing down. A suffocating silence settled in the room. Miranda glared at Robert, Joseph, Genevieve, and Dr. Miller, as if daring them to challenge her next move. The security guards stood tense, glancing from Miranda to Robert in confusion. Robert inhaled sharply, voice low but resolute. We're not covering for you anymore. What you did was criminal. People died under false pretenses. Miranda's eyes brimmed with rage. Without me, Caldwell Tech would have crumbled years ago. I cleaned up your mistakes, secured your deals, and pushed for expansions while you, she pointed at Robert, were off playing philanthropist. Joseph stepped forward, fists clenched. Don't spin this. You manipulated the data for profit, and it cost lives. You'll answer for that. Miranda let out a bitter laugh. You think a dramatic confession will fix this? The press will crucify the Caldwell name. Lawsuits will drag on for years, bankrupting your beloved empire. The board will oust you. Robert, all because you discovered a conscience at the worst possible time. Genevieve felt her pulse hammer. She glanced at Dr. Miller, who looked petrified but steadfast. The truth needed to come out. The moral cost of silence was too high. Robert's voice tightened. We'll do what's right, even if it means losing the company. A flicker of genuine hurt crossed Miranda's features, masked quickly by fury. She jerked her head at the guards, still uncertain. Well, are you going to follow my orders or stand there all night? One guard cleared his throat. Mr. Caldwell is the estate owner. We can't forcefully remove his guests without his consent. Miranda's composure cracked. She turned on Robert. You ungrateful fool. After all I've done, after all the sacrifices I made for you, you choose them. Robert shook his head. We choose the truth. This ends now. In a swift, desperate move, Miranda reached into her designer clutch and pulled out a thick envelope. She tossed it onto the desk, scattering some documents. Fine, you want truth. Here it is. Genevieve's breath caught. The envelope spilled photographs and letters across the table. They showed Robert at various events with government officials. shaking hands and signing deals, occasionally with a glass of champagne. Her heart pounded. Was this blackmail material? Miranda's voice dripped with venom. These images can be twisted in 1,000 ways: illicit lobbying, unethical dealings. If I send them to the press with the right framing, you'll be finished. That philanthropic facade you love to wear will be torn to shreds. Joseph's jaw dropped. You'd destroy Robert's public image just to save yourself. Miranda's eyes gleamed. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Robert stared at the photos, shoulders sagging under the weight of betrayal. Miranda. Why, he whispered. She sneered. Because I refuse to let years of work go down in flames. If I'm going down, I'll drag you all with me. A mixture of fear and determination coursed through Genevieve. This was bigger than personal vendettas now. Miranda had the power to unleash a scandal that could overshadow the real AI issue: the lives lost due to corporate deceit. Suddenly, Dr. Miller stepped forward, a shaky resolve in her voice. The truth about the device must come out. No matter Miranda whipped toward her. And who do you think will trust you once I release these photos? Spin the story that you were a disgruntled employee forging documents. Before Dr. Miller could retort, Joseph spoke up, voice cracking with emotion. We'll find a way to prove it's real. This is bigger than any one person's reputation. Miranda fell silent, her face twisted in fury. The envelope of blackmail lay between them like a ticking bomb. In that charged moment, it felt as if one wrong move would ignite an explosion of consequences that no one could fully predict. In the charged quiet, Genevieve reached over and scooped up a few of the scattered photos. She recognized some of the high-profile officials, senators, hospital directors. Twisting them out of context could spark a media firestorm. Robert's voice wavered, thick with regret. I should have been more vigilant. I got so carried away with growth that I left the door wide open for you to manipulate everything. Miranda snapped back. Don't pin this all on me. You were happy to let me do the dirty work while you played the righteous innovator. She pointed a manicured nail at the photos. I collected these receipts for my protection. Your choices led us here. Genevieve could see Robert visibly crumble under the weight of the accusation. It was true he'd turned a blind eye, consumed by expansions and philanthropy appearances. She felt an unexpected pang of empathy. Not forgiveness, he had hurt her deeply. But she understood how a once idealistic heart could be eroded by ambition. Dr. Miller swallowed hard, stepping close to Robert. The real story has to come out. People died due to faulty data. Families deserve justice. And we'll give them that, Joseph added, shooting a fierce look at Miranda. We won't be blackmailed into silence. Miranda's laughter was cold as ice. You'll regret this. The board will side with me when they see the scandal I can unleash. Even if the device story breaks, I'll spin it so that Robert takes the fall. I'll still walk away with a golden parachute. Robert's hands trembled at his sides. There's no easy way out, he admitted. Either we hide the truth and keep the public in the dark, or we risk losing Caldwell Tech altogether. But I can't stay silent about those deaths. A heavy beat passed as everyone registered the gravity of that choice. Genevieve felt her baby shift. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, recalling the vow she'd made to protect this child from a world dominated by lies. Mustering courage, she looked at Miranda. Whatever your threats, I'm done being afraid. The truth matters more than your empire of deceit. If you want to burn it down, go ahead. At least we won't be complicit in letting more people die. Miranda's eyes narrowed. She turned abruptly toward the guards. We're leaving. Now. The guards, clearly unsettled by what they'd heard, hesitated, but ultimately they followed Miranda out. She paused in the doorway, glancing over her shoulder, an unreadable expression crossing her face. You've sealed your fate. Don't say I didn't warn you. Then she was gone, her heels echoing ominously through the hallway. In the silence she left behind, Robert sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Dr. Miller exhaled shakily, hugging her folder of evidence. Joseph leaned against the desk, shoulders slumped in relief mixed with dread. Genevieve knelt beside Robert, placing a tentative hand on his back. She expected resentment, blame anything. Instead, he looked up with tear-filled eyes. I'm sorry, Genevieve, for everything. She didn't know if she could fully forgive him. But she knew this moment was real, his remorse, his heartbreak at seeing the company he built teeter on the edge of ruin. We need to fight for the truth, she said quietly. That's the only way forward. Robert nodded, a spark of his old determination flickering in his gaze. Then let's do it. Together. They spent the next hour huddled in that small bedroom, strategizing. Joseph made calls to a trusted legal advisor, ensuring documentation was ready for a public disclosure. Dr. Miller compiled the evidence in chronological order, highlighting the timeline of Miranda's alleged cover-ups. Robert, pale but resolute, dictated a statement accepting partial responsibility for negligence while pledging full transparency going forward. Genevieve took a moment to step into the corridor for fresh air, feeling both relieved and shaken. Voices from the main hall drifted faintly, guests still mingling, oblivious to the storm swirling behind closed doors. She wondered how many business deals had been sealed tonight on the assumption that Caldwell Tech was unstoppable. Joseph joined her, rubbing tired eyes. Lawyers are drafting an emergency press release. If we move quickly, we can control the narrative before Miranda spins her version. Genevieve nodded, gazing down at her belly. Will Robert's reputation survive? Joseph shrugged. Hard to say. This might strip him of the company, could lead to massive legal battles, but at least he'll have done the right thing. She sighed, recalling the young man who once told her, we'll build something that truly helps people. Maybe losing it all was the only path for Robert to reclaim his soul. Joseph touched her shoulder gently. I know you have every reason to walk away, especially after how he hurt you. But I see the way you look at him. Despite everything, you still care. A lump rose in her throat. We had a life together, and this child deserves a father who can be better. Joseph offered a kind smile. People can change if they're willing. They returned to the room, finding Robert and Miller finalizing the statement. Robert's voice shook slightly as he practiced reading the text. Caldwell Tech expresses deep regret for the fatalities linked to the cardiolift trials. We acknowledge discrepancies in data reporting and pledge full cooperation with authorities. He trailed off, rubbing his temples. There's no walking this back. Is there, Miller shook her head. No, Itimo. But if you show sincerity, perhaps public sentiment will see you as someone who was misled but ultimately took accountability. Miranda? Well, she has no moral high ground. Robert forced a faint smile. I appreciate your bravery in coming forward. We should have listened sooner. Just then, the door opened. Martha, the kind server, peeked in, face anxious. Genevieve, they're asking for you in the staff room. They're preparing to leave soon. Genevieve glanced at Robert, uncertain. He closed the folder in front of him. Go finish your shift, he said gently. We'll handle the press release. Tomorrow will be eventful. She swallowed the knot in her throat. There was something surreal about returning to a catering role after this life-altering confrontation. But she needed that paycheck, needed to stand on her own 2 feet. With a tiny nod, she left them to face the final hours of the night. Yet as she walked away, an odd sensation tugged at her. Tonight was far from over. Miranda's threat loomed like a gathering storm. And though they planned to announce the truth, Genevieve sensed the cost of that choice might be higher than any of them could fathom. Genevieve reached the staff lounge, where final instructions were being handed out by the catering manager. Waiters bustled about, packing leftover dishes and loading crates onto carts. Outside, thunder grumbled in the distance, and a light rain began to patter against the windows. Exhausted, Genevieve hung up her uniform apron. She pulled on a simple coat she'd left on a chair, wincing at the dull ache in her lower back. The baby's movements had calmed, as if sensing that the night was winding down. Martha approached with a sympathetic smile. We're clocking out now. You did good, especially under these circumstances. She slipped an envelope into Genevieve's hand. Tonight's pay. I made sure you got something extra for the trouble. Genevieve felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I appreciate it more than you know." Martha touched her arm. "Will you be all right? I can give you a ride if you need." Genevieve hesitated but shook her head. "I'll be fine. I need some air to think." Stepping out into the estate's rear courtyard, she inhaled the cool, rain-kissed breeze. The darkness felt oddly comforting, like a gentle embrace after the harsh glare of the reception lights. She glanced up at the mansion's windows, where silhouettes moved behind drawn curtains. Up there, Robert, Joseph, and Dr. Miller were finalizing a choice that would change everything. She meandered along a garden path, letting her mind drift. If Robert truly followed through, if he exposed the corruption, took responsibility, and lost the empire he'd built, what then? Could he start anew? Could they? A pang of uncertainty clenched her heart. She'd learned the hard way that love alone can't fix broken trust. And yet, a sliver of hope lingered. If Robert was willing to sacrifice everything for the truth, maybe redemption was possible. Caught in thought, she barely noticed a shadowy figure step from behind a tall hedge. Startled, she drew back. The figure raised an umbrella, revealing Miranda's face. Her mascara had smudged slightly, and her eyes brimmed with defiance. "You think I'm finished?" she asked, voice low. Genevieve's pulse spiked. She glanced around, noticing they were alone in this dark corner of the estate. "What do you want, Miranda?" Miranda moved closer, umbrella shielding both of them from the drizzle. "I saw Robert reading those documents. You people think you've won. You believe you'll walk away heroes, don't you?" Genevieve kept her stance firm, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We just want the truth out." A mirthless smile curved Miranda's lips. "The truth," she echoed scornfully, "is that you and Robert deserve each other. Both so blinded by ideals, you can't see the bigger picture." Her tone tightened. One scandal, and Caldwell Tech collapses. Thousands of employees lose their jobs. The medical advancements we've funded get canceled. More patients suffer in the long run. "Did you think of that?" Genevieve trembled, torn by the weight of Miranda's argument. There was a cruel logic to it. Sometimes unveiling the full truth could cause collateral damage. But she also knew living under deception would rot the company from within. "People died," she responded firmly. "How many more would die if we keep quiet?" Miranda's eyes flashed with anger. For a second, Genevieve feared she'd lash out physically. Instead, Miranda took a shaky breath. "You'll see. If Robert goes public, it won't just be me who's ruined. He'll face prison if prosecutors tie him to negligence. Don't expect him to run back into your arms once that starts." With that, Miranda turned abruptly and strode off into the rain-drenched garden, disappearing into the darkness. Shaken, Genevieve stood there, raindrops sliding off the shared umbrella. She felt her resolve waver. She wanted Robert to find redemption. But at what cost, if he was implicated? Would he vanish from her life again, this time behind bars? Lightning flickered overhead, momentarily illuminating the clouds. Genevieve made her decision. She would stand by the truth, consequences be damned. Because living a lie had already cost her too much, and this child she carried deserved a world free from Miranda's twisted manipulations. By dawn, the Caldwell estate was nearly empty. The last guest had departed, and the catering company vans rumbled away down the long driveway. Inside, echoes of the previous night's tensions seemed to linger in every corridor. Robert, Joseph, and Dr. Miller had worked through the night, finalizing statements and preparing documents for immediate release to the authorities and media outlets. Genevieve found them in the main study, pale but resolute. Stacks of paperwork were laid out in careful order. Robert looked up when she entered. Exhaustion etched in his face. "It's done," he said. Voice hoarse. "I contacted the board. We'll hold a press conference in a few hours. The attorneys are drafting an internal memo right now." Genevieve nodded, stepping closer. "Then everything changes from here." He managed a weary smile. "Better to lose what I don't deserve than keep it built on lies." Joseph cleared his throat, glancing at a ringing phone on the desk. "Reporters are already picking up rumors from overnight. The press conference might be chaotic." "Doctor, Miller gathered her papers into a neat folder. I'll testify if needed. Miranda's threat can't silence the facts. Genevieve felt a stir of gratitude. This small group had come together under impossible pressure to do the right thing. No matter the fallout, they had chosen truth over secrecy. A sudden knock on the doorframe made them all turn. Martha, the server, stood there looking uncertain. Sorry to interrupt. She began hesitantly. But someone left this for you. Genevieve, I found it near the staff exit. She held out a sealed envelope, curious and slightly apprehensive. Genevieve took it and thanked Martha. Once the server left, Genevieve opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with neat, angular handwriting. Genevieve, we're not finished. If Robert follows through, you'll regret it more than anyone. A chill ran through Genevieve as she realized the M stood for Miranda. She swallowed hard, passing the note to Robert and Joseph. Joseph exhaled. Grim. She's desperate. Robert's jaw tightened. Let her threaten. We're past the point of no return. Genevieve hoped Miranda's words were hollow. Still, anxiety pooled in her stomach. She wrapped a hand around her belly, silently vowing to protect this child. Then the phone rang again, drawing everyone's attention. Joseph picked up, speaking briefly before muting the line. It's the hospital. Miranda's there. She checked in an hour ago. Robert's eyes flashed with confusion. Hospital. Why? Joseph listened, then blinked in surprise. They're saying it's a potential overdose. Painkillers. Maybe. She's asking for you. Robert. Stunned silence gripped the room. Doctor. Miller clasped her hand over her mouth. Genevieve felt her heart lurch. Despite everything, the idea of Miranda in critical condition felt surreal. Robert raked a shaky hand through his hair, guilt mingling with worry. My God, she must have felt cornered. Without hesitation, Robert threw on a jacket. I have to go. Joseph nodded. I'll drive. Genevieve hesitated, torn between following them and staying behind to finalize the day's crucial revelations. She looked at Robert, uncertain. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Stay here. We'll handle the hospital. Let the lawyers know we might delay the press conference a few hours. She nodded, watching him and Joseph rush out. Dick Miller left shortly after to ensure the data files were securely delivered. Genevieve stood alone in the cavernous study, the morning sun casting long shadows across the floor. In a few hours, the world would learn about Caldwell Tech's hidden past. She braced for the media storm, for the possible dismantling of everything Robert once cherished. Yet now a new question gnawed at her. What if Miranda's overdose was real? If Miranda survived, would she retaliate even more fiercely? Or was this the tragic breaking point for a woman consumed by ambition and fear? Genevieve placed a hand over her heart, the other protectively over her unborn child, as a swirl of conflicting emotions washed over her. Outside, an engine roared to life. She peered through the study's window, watching Robert's car vanish down the driveway. The estate was eerily still, bracing for a day of seismic upheaval. For now, the fate of Caldwell Tech and perhaps Miranda's life hung in the balance. Yet in the quiet aftermath, one message was clear. Doing the right thing rarely comes without consequences. Today, Robert and Genevieve would face those consequences head-on. But the final outcome was far from written, because every ending is just a new beginning waiting to unfold.